Welcome, welcome, welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Have you ever had one of those moments where, your gut tells you one thing, but your logical brain is just screaming something completely different?
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe wondered why sometimes, even when the facts are right there, we just cling so stubbornly to our beliefs.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving headfirst into Daniel Kahneman's really groundbreaking book, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It really is. It's a work that doesn't just explain these little quirks. It kind of fundamentally rewires how you see your own mind operating.
hmm And our mission really in this deep dive is to unpack the core ideas, the revelations from Kahneman's work.
Right.
Especially his big concept, the two systems of thinking. And then we'll dig into some of those cognitive biases and mental shortcuts that shape our decisions every day.
We want to give you, the listener, a shortcut to really getting a handle on human cognition, hopefully providing some of those aha moments,
Yeah, those moments where you suddenly understand why you think the way you do or process information in a certain way.
Exactly, without getting sort of bogged down in really dense academic language.
Right, because this isn't just an important book for people in the field.
No, not at all. For anyone following behavioral science, Kahneman's work, it's transformative.
It really is.
So let's get into it. This revolutionary idea of System 1 and System 2. Kahneman proposes these two distinct ways our minds work, right?
Oh my God.
Always interacting.
Indeed. So think of System 1 first. That's your intuition. It's automatic, lightning fast.
The immediate reaction stuff.
Exactly. It operates almost entirely without conscious effort. You don't even notice it most of the time, which makes it incredibly efficient.
It's like the mental workhorse handling most of the day-to-day thinking.
Totally. When you hear a loud bang and jump or, you see a friend's face in a crowd and recognize them instantly, that's System 1 doing its thing.
And what's really interesting about System 1 is how much it relies on intuition, but it's not. It's not some kind of mystical sixth sense, is it?
No, not at all. It's actually a complex blend. It's your past experiences, your emotions, even like cultural learning, all mashed together and processed at incredible speed.
That makes sense. It's what lets us navigate the world without having to consciously analyze every single tiny detail.
Right. Then you've got the other player, System 2.
The slow one.
The slow one, yeah. It's deliberate. It's effortful thinking. Unlike System 1, this one operates under your conscious control.
And it takes work.
It takes real mental energy. It demands attention, significant resources.
So this is where the heavy lifting happens, analytically speaking.
Precisely. When you're trying to solve, say, a complex math problem, or you're really trying to pick apart a complicated argument.
Or even just focusing on one conversation when there's a lot of background noise. That takes effort.
That's System 2 flexing its muscles. It's our logical, analytical engine. But, and this is really crucial, it's not like they're in competition or one is better. They're in this constant dynamic interplay.
How does that work then?
Well, System 1 is always on, generating impressions, feelings, gut reactions, offering its quick takes on everything.
Okay.
And System 2, ideally, often steps in to review or maybe even override those initial impulses, especially if the situation is new or complex or, needs careful attention to detail.
But the key insight from Kahneman, the real genius of it, is realizing how often we just default to System 1, right?
Yeah.
Even when System 2 probably should be engaged.
Exactly. That's the crux of it.
And that default, that reliance on the fast system, that's where things get really interesting and sometimes, a little messy. Because this interplay, or maybe the lack of System 2 oversight, leads us straight into those mental shortcuts and systematic errors Kahneman is famous for describing, the cognitive biases and heuristics.
Right. And we know cognitive biases aren't just random mistakes. They're systematic flaws in how we judge things, often born directly from System 1 trying to be efficient.
So what's a classic example?
Well, a huge one you see everywhere, especially today, is confirmation bias.
Ah, yes.
It's that almost unavoidable tendency we have to actively look for information that confirms what we already believe.
And at the same time?
And at the same time, often without realizing it, we downplay or just flat out ignore anything that contradicts our existing ideas.
It's insidious, isn't it? It's not just that it happens, but it actively shapes the information bubbles, the echo chambers so many of us live in now.
Precisely. It really makes you question how much of our rational thinking is just System 1 seeking easy agreement.
It does. Okay, what's another big one?
How about anchoring bias?
Okay, anchoring. Explain that.
This is where we tend to rely way too heavily on the very first piece of information we get. The anchor. even if that information is completely irrelevant to the actual decision.
Huh, like in negotiations, that first offer someone throws out.
Exactly. That initial price, even if it's totally outrageous, it sets a mental anchor. And it can warp every offer and counteroffer that follows. It's a really powerful psychological effect.
Yeah, you can see how that plays out.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Then there's the availability heuristic.
Availability. So what's easily available in our minds?
Pretty much. It's our tendency to overestimate the importance or the likelihood of things that are easy for us to recall. Information that's readily available in our memory.
Give me an example.
Sure. Imagine there's a really dramatic news story about, say, shark attacks, and it's playing constantly.
Okay.
Because that story is so vivid and easy to bring to mind, you might start to feel that shark attacks are far more common or threatening than they actually are, statistically speaking.
Right. What's vivid feels more probable, even if it isn't.
Exactly. What's easy to access in memory gets overestimated.
Okay, so those are some key biases. But Kahneman also talks about heuristics more broadly, right? These mental shortcuts.
Yes. Heuristics are those shortcuts we use for quick decision-making. They're often incredibly useful. They save time and energy.
Right.
But, like biases, they can lead us astray. They're not foolproof rules.
Okay, so give us an example of a heuristic that can sometimes trip us up.
Well, there's representative bias, or the representativeness heuristic. This leads us to judge how likely something is based on how well it seems to match a typical example or stereotype in our minds.
Rather than looking at the actual probabilities.
Exactly. The classic example Kahneman uses involves describing someone. Let's say I describe a person as quiet, loves reading, very organized.
What about a librarian?
See, System 1 jumps right to librarian because that description represents our stereotype of a librarian.
But statistically.
But statistically, there are vastly more people in, say, sales or farming who might also fit that description, just because there are so many more people in those professions overall.
So we mistake resemblance for actual likelihood.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's a classic System 1 shortcut that ignores base rates.
Fascinating. And you mentioned availability earlier. There's another related concept, isn't there? The availability cascade.
Yes, good point. The availability cascade is slightly different from the heuristic. It's more of a social phenomenon.
How so?
It's where an idea or a story, maybe initially based on a low probability event, gets picked up and repeated publicly. It gets discussed more and more.
So it becomes more available in the public discourse.
Exactly. And as it gets repeated, it gains perceived importance and believability, not necessarily because of new evidence, but simply because everyone is talking about it. It creates a self-reinforcing cycle.
Ah, so it's not just about individual memory recall, but a collective amplification.
Right. You see this play out in public panics or the rise and fall of certain policy ideas. Widespread discussion can make something seem much more significant or credible than it actually is.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, moving on to maybe one of the most powerful and kind of counterintuitive concepts in the book, loss aversion.
Yes, loss aversion. This is fundamental. It's not just that we dislike losing things.
Which we obviously do.
Right, but it's the profound psychological finding that the pain of a loss is felt much more intensely, typically about twice as intensely, as the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
So losing $100 feels way worse than gaining $100 feels good.
Significantly worse for most people. The emotional impact is asymmetrical.
And what's really revolutionary about that isn't just that we avoid losses, but, correct me if I'm wrong, this pain can actually make us reject really good bets, right? Like the fear of a small loss outweighs the prospect of a much bigger gain.
Absolutely. It leads to decisions that look irrational from a purely traditional economic standpoint. Economists used to assume we just calculated expected value.
But loss aversion shows our emotions heavily skew that calculation.
Completely. It flips that idea of the perfectly rational economic actor on its head.
And the implications are huge, aren't they? I mean, you see it everywhere.
Oh, definitely. In finance, it helps explain why people might hold on to losing investments for way too long, hoping they'll recover rather than cutting their losses. The pain of realizing the loss is too great.
Yeah, the disposition effect.
Exactly. But it's also huge in marketing. Think about free trials ending or limited time offers expiring. That fear of losing the opportunity is powerful.
And product design, political campaigns, how issues are framed to emphasize potential losses versus gains.
Which brings us nicely to another key idea, the framing effect.
Right. How you say something matters just as much as what you say.
Precisely. The exact same information, just presented with a different emphasis or context, a different frame, can lead people to make completely different choices.
It's amazing how powerful it is once you start noticing it.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about positive framing. Information is presented in terms of gains or positive attributes.
Like a food product advertised as, say, 90% fat-free.
Right. Sounds pretty good. Focuses on the positive. Makes you feel optimistic, maybe more likely to buy it.
But flip the frame.
Flip the frame. Use negative framing for the exact same product. Describe it as contains 10% fat.
Ooh, yeah. Suddenly sounds less healthy.
Exactly. It highlights the potential downside, the negative attribute. It can lead to pessimism, maybe make you hesitate, or choose something else.
Even though it's the identical product, the information content is the same.
The objective information is identical, but the frame manipulates our System 1 perception and our resulting decision. It's incredibly influential.
Okay, so we've covered the two systems: biases, heuristics, loss aversion, framing. This stuff is incredibly insightful. But let's talk about the impact. This book, Thinking Fast and Slow, it wasn't just another psychology book, was it?
Oh, not at all. Its influence has been massive, truly far-reaching. It didn't just add to the conversation, it fundamentally reshaped thinking across so many fields.
Like what?
Well, obviously economics, psychology, but also finance, marketing, public policy, business strategy, even medicine and law. It's hard to overstate the impact.
And it was particularly key for behavioral economics.
Absolutely central. Kahneman actually won the Nobel Prize in economics for this work, even though he's a psychologist.
Right, because it challenged that core assumption of the rational actor.
Exactly. Behavioral economics basically grew out of this kind of research, examining how real human psychology, our biases, emotions, social factors, actually influences economic decisions, rather than assuming perfect rationality.
So, connecting this back to you, our listener, why is understanding all this stuff so crucial?
Well, because these aren't just abstract theories. They describe how your mind works. Understanding System 1 and 2, recognizing potential biases like confirmation bias or anchoring.
Or realizing how susceptible you might be to framing or loss aversion.
Right, it gives you a new lens. A way to understand your own choices better, whether you're making a big financial decision, evaluating a news report, managing a team, or even just navigating personal relationships.
Yeah.
It helps you understand human behavior in almost any context.
It's like getting a peek under the hood of your own thinking process.
A very valuable peek.
Now, we always aim for a balanced perspective here. As groundbreaking as Thinking Fast and Slow is, no single work has all the answers. It has faced some critiques and has limitations, right?
Yes, definitely. And it's important to acknowledge those for a full picture.
What's one common critique?
Well, one notable point is that the book focuses very heavily on individual cognitive processes, how one person thinks.
Okay.
And some critics argue that this focus can sometimes downplay the really powerful role that social context, culture, and our interactions with others play in shaping how we think and make decisions.
Right. We don't think in a vacuum. Our environment, the people around us, they constantly influence both System 1 and System 2.
Exactly. So the individual focus, while revealing, might not capture the whole complexity of real-world decision-making, which is often very social.
That's fair. And another piece of feedback I've heard, maybe more from readers looking for practical takeaways.
Yes, the point about practical advice.
Yeah. The criticism that while the book is brilliant at diagnosing how our minds work, and importantly, how they often misfire, it doesn't always offer clear step-by-step instructions on how to actually improve your decision-making skills day to day.
That's a common observation. It's more of a profound diagnostic tool and explanation of the machinery.
Than, say, a self-help manual with exercises.
Right. It gives you the map of the mind's territory, their potential pitfalls, but maybe not a detailed GPS with turn-by-turn directions for navigating every specific decision flawlessly.
So it provides the framework, the lens, but it's less prescriptive about exactly what to do with that knowledge in every situation.
I think that's a fair way to put it. It empowers through understanding, primarily.
Okay. So wrapping things up then, despite any limitations, Thinking Fast and Slow is, it's undeniably a masterpiece, isn't it?
Without a doubt. It truly revolutionized how we understand human thinking. Its insights are just essential, really, for anyone curious about themselves, their choices, and the world around them.
It's one of those books that genuinely changes how you think about thinking itself.
It absolutely is.
So, building on that point about the lack of explicit practical advice, maybe here's a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay.
If the book mainly gives us the diagnosis, the awareness, how can simply being aware of these systems, these biases, knowing their names, understanding how they work, how can that awareness itself be the starting point?
Interesting question.
Can just knowing about confirmation bias or loss aversion or the framing effect start to help you critically evaluate your own decisions, your own reactions to information?
Does the awareness itself create a space for System 2 to potentially step in more often?
Yeah. Does understanding the map automatically make you a slightly more cautious traveler and maybe prompt you to actively seek out ways to apply this knowledge to move from just understanding the diagnosis to actually trying to, improve the outcome?
That's a great question. Does awareness naturally lead to vigilance and then maybe to behavioral change?
Cool.
Something definitely worth reflecting on.
Absolutely. Well, we really hope you found this deep dive into Kahneman's work valuable.
Hope it sparks some thoughts.
If you did enjoy it, please do take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring more deep dives like this one straight to you.
We appreciate the support.
Until next time, keep thinking critically and maybe with a little more awareness of both your fast and slow systems.